So the Browns still have some holes that they need to fill coming into the draft and maybe coming out of the draft, or maybe they're not holes as much as they are places on the roster where you don't want to feel like you're out of luck completely if you don't get the 3 or 4 players that you want to get at a spot, right? Specifically, I'm talking about some of the positions on the defensive side of the ball, right? Edge rusher, and an interior defensive lineman. So we're going to talk about some last minute free agent signings that the Browns can make on that end, and how those guys could potentially affect the Cleveland Browns. The first guy that I want to talk about is a guy we're all familiar with. We know the pros and the cons of this guy. It's Larry Ogunjobi, right? Now he's coming off of an Achilles injury, or was it a ACL? Pretty late in the year. So you're talking about a player that you're probably not going to be able to get play from at best, week 8? And that's generous. But we know what we can get out of Larry Ogunjobi, especially next to Myles Garrett. Now, Larry had his issues in Cleveland when it came to fit-wise, right? He was not great as an interior run defender, and he was somebody who was really good at getting to the quarterback. Those are his strengths. That's his weakness. Cincinnati did a really good job of supplementing those weaknesses with Larry Ogunjobi by pairing him up with BJ Hill a lot and DJ Reader, both guys who are really excellent in that aspect of the game, right, and run defending. So then when you had Larry on the field, it was really just so Larry can get upfield and blitz. Now, is Larry going to be better than what you could get at 44 for a defensive tackle? No. But let's say somebody you can't pass on is available there at 44 that's not a defensive tackle. Let's say, and I'm just being 100% hypothetical just to prove a point here, what if it's like Garrett Wilson, right? What if you get to 44 and Garrett Wilson's right there? And you got to take Garrett Wilson because, oh my God, why is he there at 44? But if you take Garrett Wilson there, that means you're not going to get Perrion. You're not going to get Travis Jones. You're not going to get Logan Hall. You're not going to get any of those interior defensive tackles that he talked about. And you're going to have to settle with other options. Larry Ogunjobi, he's probably the youngest guy that we're going to talk about, the youngest solution here. Familiarity with the Cleveland Browns, only spent 1 season not with the team, and is somebody who we know what he can do, right? He could be another pass rusher. You can sign in, or maybe you could draft a big body in the draft to help be more of that run plugger. But again, it mitigates some of those issues as some insurance if you brought back Larry Ogunjobi. The next guy I want to talk about is Akiem Hicks. He's right now PFF's 26th ranked free agent available. He is 32.4 years old. And I know when we hear Akiem Hicks, we think of back when he was a star player. He is not that anymore. He is a role player, a veteran role player, kind of similar to a Malik Jackson, somebody who used to be a superstar, but now is kind of ready to get into that second part of their career. I mean, that's where Akiem Hicks is. Do I think this would be a great fit? Again, when we're talking about any of these guys, this is not where I want the Browns' solution to be for defensive tackle, because I feel like going another year with another duct-taped 1-year defensive tackle solution might not be the greatest thing for this team's future. I would really like it if they could just focus some real significant assets in this year's draft in solving that problem once and for all for at least a couple of years, because we keep recycling the interior, and I think it makes it really hard to get that cohesion on the defensive line so that it performs not only to potential at times, but also consistently throughout the year, whether it's late or early. But again, Akiem Hicks is a guy that they could bring in. He would be pretty similar to a Malik Jackson and at a pretty similar point in his career to a Malik Jackson. All of these guys are going to be veterans, right? The next guy I want to talk about bringing in, and this is like, hey, if you can't bring in Clowney, or maybe you can bring in Clowney and you can get this number down for Melvin Ingram, but Melvin Ingram is also another player, right? Now, the issue with Melvin Ingram is, does he want to take that veteran backup role, right? He had an issue taking that role in Pittsburgh. It led to his release or trade or whatever happened with him during the year. And that's how he ended up in Kansas City last year. So there are some questions about his willingness to accept the role. That price tag, 1 year, $8 million, is ridiculously high for Melvin Ingram. I don't think he'll end up getting that. He's an older guy, but still a productive guy. Again, he's probably best suited to be your third pass rusher, right? Or maybe your fourth pass rusher, or somebody that you can have out there to hold it down while the starters are on the bench. That's really where his best role is. Does he see himself as that? Is he willing to take that role? That's a whole nother question. The money, would that make sense at $8 million to bring him in as a fourth pass rusher, because you already have Chase? Well, he will be either third or fourth with Chase competing with him, and then having Clowney and Myles Garrett. And again, it's another kind of duct tape solution for that depth there in your edge rush room, but you do always want to make sure you have some depth. And it would make sense for him, right, coming to what would be, if he came back and if Clowney came back, a pretty loaded defensive edge room. He would have a lot of freedom and a lot of room to get the numbers and the stats that he might want to get one more big deal before he retires. Another guy in that position who's just a little bit older than the last guy is Justin Houston, who I thought had a pretty nice season in Baltimore. Now, he's old. He's not going to be expensive. He's another guy who used to be a star pass rusher that's now kind of in the twilight of his career. Again, this would be a one-year solution. It's not ideal. We don't want to be here with this, but this is just where they have to be to make sure that they have some flexibility in the draft here. Again, Justin Houston's older. He could play that edge. I think he's somebody who would rotate in quite well in doing the same stuff that the Browns did with Tack McKinley last year, where we had Tack really line up outside the shoulder of Myles Garrett and really take on those tight ends and those chips that Myles gets to kind of take that away from offensive lines. So that might be the role that he could play in. It could be interesting to see if he can do that at his age. Again, he's older. 33 years old. We're talking about, serious gambles at this point, but he's a veteran. He's somebody who won't be asked to do too much. And I think that's ultimately what you would want. The last guy we're going to talk here is Linval Joseph. I would consider bringing him in. Like, let's say they do bring in a Larry Ogunjobi, right? And then they draft a Perion Winfrey, and, I think a Linval Joseph would be somebody who'd be strong to bring in there. Now, he had a decent pass rushing year last year, but he's mainly been a run stuffing defensive tackle. And again, if you have Larry Ogunjobi, the smart thing the Bengals did was bring in a guy like BJ Hill, right, who can take care of those rundowns, so you can use those two players kind of in between like that. So that's why I would bring in Linval, if you're going to pair him with a Larry Ogunjobi and kind of use him like that. And I think that'd be the best way to get the best out of both of these players, right? You don't want to put them out of position. Now, when it comes to all of the guys I've named, I think I named 5 players on this list. What do I think is the most realistic, right? I think it's probably Larry could make more sense than I think a lot of people want to give it credit for. I think Akiem Hicks would probably make sense too, in that Malik Jackson role where they just want a veteran, once camp comes around, just as insurance if they do draft somebody at 44 and they're not sure that player is going to be ready. So I would keep my eyes on those two. Larry Ogunjobi's kind of an interesting situation because he failed that physical, so there's really going to be no movement on him until he can more reliably pass a physical. And also the question is asked, if he has passed his physical, is it realistic to expect that he could be on track on his injury recovery? And if that's not the case, is he even going to play this year, right? If those factors weren't involved, I think Larry would have he would have obviously been signed to the Chicago Bears. They offered him a contract that he had to rescind because he couldn't pass the physical. But If those things were all equal, then I think Larry would be almost a slam dunk to come back here, at least from the Cleveland Browns perspective. I don't know what Larry would be thinking there. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What last minute free agents on the defensive side of the ball do you want the Browns to pursue? Let me know your thoughts down there. But again, guys, thank you for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.